Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about how is medical coding work distributed. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, so I got this comment from a viewer. I'm going to read the comment and then we're going to get into it. So here we go. So the viewer says, what is it like working in a team? Do you work with a team of coders on-site or remote? Is it individual-based teams or what? Okay, so here's the thing. Every place is going to be different, all right? Every place, how they distribute the workload, how they divide up the clinics, it's going to be different at every place. I've seen some places where they have, everybody is just assigned to the work queue. So basically all of the encounters flow into this work queue as a huge list, and you just work through the list by date, and then you complete all of that. Everybody works together to complete all of those encounters and then move on to the next day and the next day and the next day. And that's how that situation works out. When I worked at home for a level 1 trauma hospital, that's what they did. The only problem with that is when you work in a queue situation where everybody has no assigned providers or no assigned clinics and everybody works from the same pot, what happens is that sometimes coders will go in and they will skip charts that are difficult. So they'll get into the chart, they'll back out of it, and they say, oh no, we don't allow for skipping at our facility. Trust me, if people are there for a while, they'll figure out how to skip. And how do I know that? I know that because, again, working for a level 1 trauma hospital like I did a few years ago, I ran into that. I ran into all of the hard stuff was left at the end of the night when I came on, and I had some gnarly accidents and everything. And I was just like, this is a little weird because I wasn't told this when I got hired on. I was told that there was a break in between, that I would get some easier procedures, some appendectomies and colonoscopies and things like that. So, I mean, cool, but no, I was getting nothing but hard stuff. And so ever since then, I always told myself I will never, ever work as a coder in a queue situation where everybody works from the same pot. But I did talk with my boss about it. And she was just like, oh, no one skips. And I said, I had this one. It was pretty bad. So the next one was pretty bad. So she went and she ran a report of all the encounters that I had been doing. And she was looking at the difficulty of them all. And she was like, wait a second. And I was like, yeah. And so she's like, okay. So there was a huge meeting about that the next day, about not skipping. But people will do that, either because they're trying to make up for their time, they're trying to make up for their speed, and it's all about productivity. If you go low a couple of days, you're not meeting productivity, the average productivity, because it's always going to be average. It's never going to be you have to do this many per day. It's always going to be average per day, because every day is going to be different. There's going to be some days where you have like school stuff, like not school stuff, but like education things to do and at work, and so you have to back that time out of the work time, and so that's how that goes. And then if you look at the time that you did spend coding, did you meet productivity and accuracy and that kind of thing? But with all that said, I say all this to say that that's what happens when you work in a queue situation, is that everybody's working from the same pot. Nobody's assigned to clinics or anything like that, so we're all basically working as a team to get everything done. And sometimes what they do, if it's a situation like that, in a queue situation, they will assign the coders. Somebody like a lead medical coder will do the assignments for the coders, and they'll say, okay, you're going to get this many records, and you're going to get a variety. You're going to get some easy stuff and some difficult charts and things like that, or some high dollar charts and some low dollar charts. High dollar charts usually means that it's something that is like very complex. High dollar, hello, so that's what they do at some facilities as well, is that they will say, okay, since the queue situation doesn't really work, where people can be honest about what they're taking, we're going to go ahead and split up the workload this way, where we assign records. But then you have to have somebody full-time to be doing that. And so it gets a little bit tedious, okay? And then, of course, you get people who get upset because then they think that this person is favoring this person, and then it gets a little bit messy. And so, again, not an ideal situation to work in where they're assigning you records to do, okay? But, again, it works for some facilities. I just would not do it because, again, you never know. You never know what somebody's intentions are. And if you're really good at coding all the complex stuff, but somebody else is not good at coding complex stuff, they're good at coding easier things, and you get stuck with all the hard stuff, is that fair? Now, to me, when I had my situation with working at home and I got stuck with all the hard stuff, was it a little bit like, hey man, that's not fair? Yes, it was not fair, because if I don't meet productivity, then I can't get bonuses, and that was kind of messing with me too, because like I do my work, but if I have to stop and look at this record, I'm going to spend the time to look at the record, right? And so I just didn't think that was fair, but I still got compensated because of the simple fact that I was doing really difficult charts. But again, if you're showing proficiency at difficult charts and somebody else is, give the easy stuff to that person because, otherwise they can't do these other harder charts like so-and-so can. That's not fair either. And because everybody should be brought up to be the same way. Everybody should have those skills built up into each one of them so that each person is strong, no matter who's there and who's not there, that the coding can always get done. And just because one person is not there, then the coding goes, all to, it gets all messed up. No, it should not be that way, In my organization, though, where I work currently, we are assigned to clinics. Now, some clinics have 2 coders, and then they split the workload between each other. So when I did have a partner a few years ago, we worked together in orthopedics and podiatry. And so what we did was we came up with the idea one day, because what we would do is one person would code for all of the encounters that came in for one whole week. And then the next person, my partner, would code for all of the encounters that came in the following week. Well, meanwhile, I'm still working on that first week's worth of encounters. And so by the time that second week rolls around, by the end of that second week, I should be done completely with all of the encounters for 1 week for orthopedics and podiatry. And then the cycle starts again. So on that third week, it's my week. It's my active week, okay? And so then my partner, it's her inactive week. And so she's basically working on that week's worth of stuff into that next week. And so that's the way that it is. The only problem, with this kind of workload situation is that if one person has to go on leave. Now this did happen, okay? So my partner had to go on leave. So I said, hey, let me know what you need to get done so that way I can do it while you're gone. Well, she said no. She was not going to give me the work to do. And she said, you have your own work. And I said, I know that, but you're going to be gone for a little while. She was going to be gone for a little while. I mean, this was not like a one and done. No, she was going to be gone for a couple of weeks. I can't remember now. Maybe been 15 days, maybe been 20 days, something like that. So she was going to be gone for a while. And there was going to be records that were going to be pulled to be audited, because every month we have records pulled for audit. And if they're not coded, then they start, getting a little fussy about that, because we're supposed to have all of that stuff done. Well, if she's not there and it's her active week and something gets pulled and it's not done, then all of a sudden people start hollering. So I said, okay, well, let's go ahead and jump in. Let me be proactive. And that's what I said. She's like, I'm going on leave. Blah, blah, blah. And so I said, okay, well, let's go ahead and work out a plan so that way I know what to do for you, and then I can just take care of my stuff. She's like, no, you just keep your stuff. You don't worry about mine. I go, but we have to have a plan, so that we can work this out. And she's like, no. So I went to my boss and told my boss, I was like, hey, I'm trying to get this work from her so that way if it gets audited, it's already completed and everything's done, and we're not going to fall behind. And then she's like, and she won't give it to me. She said, Bleu, don't worry about it. And I said, you too? I go, really? Like, I don't get it. Like, why are we not planning this? I have to have a plan, because if I have a plan, then everything is fine. I know how to manage my providers on my week, and I know what to do, And she's like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it, and we'll find out what needs to be done. And I was like, fine, whatever. So sure enough, she went on leave. My partner went on leave, and then I was able to find out what needed to be done. It was all of the hard stuff that needed to be done that was still left to do. And so I was just like, oh my gosh. So another coder got pulled in to help, and she was like, well, what do we do? Because she has a real strong accent. And so I was helping her. I was helping her to learn what to do for the coding for our side. And then, so I was giving her the easier stuff to do because, I mean, to me, I already know what to do with the difficult stuff, so I knew how to get through it, and whereas it was going to take her longer to get through, so I just gave her some of the easier ones to do, so that way she could take care of those and I could take care of the harder ones, and everything could get done. Well, everything did get done. And then when my partner came back, all of a sudden, here comes the audit list of who got audited and what records got pulled and things like that. Sure enough, the ones that were for her week, for her active week, were the ones that were pulled. So here we go. Okay. So she's like, oh, thank you so much for stepping in and taking care of everything. If I hadn't insisted, it wouldn't have been done. It would not have been done. So that's one of the reasons it's kind of hairy when, you have two partners and one takes leave and the other one doesn't want to give the workload. That's the thing, that it becomes a problem. So later on, my partner and I, when we moved into the new hospital, we decided to say, okay, let's do it this way. Instead of doing 1 week on, 1 week off, why don't we split the providers down the middle, and then that way we can get used to those particular providers, because it's a smaller number of providers. It's still just as much work, and we still get to keep them. We still get to build relationships with those providers, and then everything is more consistent, because when it comes to injury coding, you know what I mean? Like it's you have to really look at what you're doing, and so it worked out perfectly. Once we started to split the providers, then we could say, okay, this is my provider, I'm working with them, and this is what we're doing. And we were able to get through the encounters much more quickly, and we were able to exceed our productivity. So that was a really good idea when you have two people in the same clinic, rather than having the 1 week on, 1 week off, and then like you don't know who did it, who coded the record. Then well, if I have this doctor, then that's my doctor. If it's this other doctor, then it's her doctor, right? And so that was a better situation. Now I have both orthopedics and podiatry all to myself, which I am totally fine with. And I am very, very territorial of my clinics. Nobody talks to my providers but me. Nobody talks to them but me, because of the simple fact, if you have other people coming in and giving their opinions on how to do things, or maybe they're not as skilled or as knowledgeable as somebody who's been doing it, and then all of a sudden that other person starts saying things to the providers, now they don't know who to listen to. And that does not work. When you are talking with providers, you have to be consistent. And even when it was me and my partner, we still had that where nobody talked to them but us. Everybody knew if you have any questions or if anybody else comes to you, then you need to make sure that you ask either Bleu or my partner. So that was the thing. No one talked to them but us, period. Because if you have too many people coming in with too many different opinions, and then it's already confusing to providers, because I get the Bleu, you're speaking coder. So that's where, you have to be very careful, and you don't want to overwhelm providers. So if you get them to be consistent with you, they learn to trust you, because they know that they know who to go to, and they know who's going to take care of them. So I've always had that with my providers. Now, There was a time when I had pneumonia a few years ago, and it was real bad. I mean, it was real bad because I have asthma as well, and having asthma and also having pneumonia, it was not a good time. Okay, so I was out of work for a little while, and I think I was out for a couple of weeks because that's how sick I was. It was really bad, and so but while I was out, of course, my stuff got taken over because I was out for like 2 weeks, and so somebody else stepped in. Another lady stepped in. Bless this lady. I'm thinking at this time, I had my aha moment, but I didn't quite associate other people's knowledge. I didn't start thinking about other people's knowledge until later on. And what I mean by that is, if I'm thinking that if at the time, if you have a degree, then you have advanced knowledge. That's what I would think. And then if you had years of experience, you had a lot of knowledge, right? That's not necessarily the case, right? And so the lady that was helping out for me while I was out sick, she did not know anything about orthopedic coding or podiatry coding. Didn't know a thing, right? But she was there to help. Okay, she was there to help. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, she's got a few years more of experience on me at the time. So I was like, okay, it should be fine. Well, she came over to me and she's like, hey, Blue, do you think you can double check these records with me and make sure that I did them right? And I'm like, why? And then she goes, well, it's just that I haven't really done this before. I'm like, why didn't you ask the supervisor? Why are you asking me? Because it's not registering that she may not know or understand. She's like, well, I just didn't really know if I should. I said, yeah, that's what the supervisors are there for. You have to ask them. And she's like, well, I know that you know a lot when it comes to injuries, and that's why I wanted to ask you. I said, well, I mean, whatever you coded is what you coded. I mean, unless it came back, unless they said, they're going to know who coded it. But I mean, I'm sure it should be fine. I go, is there anything specific that you want to know? And she's like, well, can you explain? And then she asked me a bunch of questions to explain. So it's like, yeah. And so I would explain it to her. She's like, oh, thank you. That's awesome. And I would show her in coding clinic and CPT assistant, how to find it. I showed her in the CPT book. So I spent time with her, that day, but I was just like, why are you, then I started getting nervous, like, like, what do you mean? But, she was fine. She was fine. Obviously nothing came back, but, she was okay. It was just the fact of she wanted that reassurance. And then that's when I started to understand that even somebody with years of experience still sometimes needs some reassurance, and she's just one of those that she just needed some reassurance. And again, when it comes to providers and the coders and things like that, and who's ever doing the coding of things, it really goes back to that relationship. And for me, we didn't have those close relationships at that time, but I was still very territorial of my clinic, because again, you take a lot of pride in doing what you do, and for somebody else to come in and they don't have experience and they don't really know, what I mean, it gets kind of tricky. But yeah, that's how workload can be distributed and what can happen. But sometimes that's what happens. You do have to share the workload sometimes when things happen. And obviously I did not plan to have pneumonia, but it happened and it worked out that way, and it was fine. It was fine. But again, now, of course, when I'm going on leave or something, if I have to go on extended leave, which I don't take extended leave a lot, but if I am going to be out on leave, I do let my providers know. So again, if they have anything, if they have any questions or whatever, they can just email them to me and I will get back to them when I come back to work. Because again, I don't want them feeling like they don't have somebody to turn to, but at the same time, they need to know that I'm the one that they got to go to. Okay. That's the way you have to establish it too when you're working in clinics, is if you have your providers and they're working with you, they have to work with you, period. They have to work with you. And it's not where I don't like what she's saying, so I'm going to go to her boss. No. We don't do that, because Blue is here to help you. That's what we do. And so I have not had an issue, so thank goodness. Knock on wood, let me knock on wood there, but that's the thing. When it comes to the work and how your clinics are set up, it really all depends on the facility that you're at. How big is the practice? How big are those clinics? I have juggled anywhere between, I'd say 13 providers all at once to 22 at one time. 22 different personalities, 22 different ways of doing things, 22 different ways of having to explain something. So, again, it really all goes back to that training, that one-on-one time, because if you train them well and you work with them well, the end result and the product will be fantastic. I mean, you can have some really awesome experiences just working with your providers and getting them to really understand what it is that we do and you understanding what they do, because it is a two-way street. It is a two-way street. And when you're working with providers, and I know that this thing is about workload and things like that, but this all does coincide with that, because if you are doing really well with those providers, and that means that you're going to be able to produce more. The workload's going to be much easier for you to get through, because of the simple fact that all of a sudden everything is there that needs to be there. The documentation is consistent. It's not all over the place, and this doctor forgets to sign their notes, and you've got to send them a query, and you've got to do this. You're not having to query. And that was the other thing too that they noticed, is that when my partner and I did that, the number of queries that we had to do when we separated the clinic and we had our own providers, the number of queries in our clinic, went down. And that's remarkable. And it says something, because that meant that we had more one-on-one time with those providers. And because we had more one-on-one time with them, we could give them more specialty attention. And with that more specialty attention, they don't have to sit here and question, well, what are we doing? What are we doing? They didn't have to do that. It was like, okay, I can go to this person if I have a question, and I can get a direct answer. So that's the thing, that's how that works out. And then you can have just complete peace in your clinic, and you can be able to get through your clinic, and you can have your encounters there, and they can be correct, and you can fly through those encounters. I've had providers like that who were really good. Once I got them and we sat down together, and everything is great, Then I was just like, okay, I have to do very little changes. This is wonderful, because they got so good at it, and they take pride in it too. Because if you're excited about coding, then they get excited about coding. You notice that? Like, if you are excited about coding, they know you're excited about coding. They're already not like, oh, like, what do we do? I'm always told that I'm wrong. No, that's not the way to do it, But like I said, another episode for another time. But yeah, that's what happens when you are working in a clinic, or you're working, in a hospital or facility or whatever. I work in a hospital. So, I still do outpatient coding in a hospital. There's outpatient coders in a hospital. And again, it really all depends on what clinic that you are working in. It depends on how big that clinic is, and it depends on if you have partners. If you have partners in that clinic, you all need to get on the same page with your knowledge and with what happens and all of these things. Because I did have to help my partner quite a bit when it came to learning injury coding in the beginning, and which was fine, because I had plenty of knowledge about that. And I love to talk about injury coding, And so, but, that's just the way that worked out. And like I said, if you can get on the same page with your partner, even more magic happens. Because now you not only have one person that really loves it, you've got another person. And then once you have that synergy, and, it's wonderful. It really is. And so, like I said, so excited. But if you're working with your providers, and you're in your clinic, and you're having everything run smoothly, make sure that you stay on top of the coding guidelines. Make sure you stay on top of the latest when it comes to coding, because you never want to slip back into habits that may not have carried over into the next year, because things do update. So always make sure that you're double checking yourself, okay? And like I said, even with the lady that I thought that she would know and she didn't know, She's learned a lot, and even still, she still asks me questions on occasion. I'll still get emails from her occasionally saying, hey, what do you think of this situation? And I'm like, well, you know, and then I'll give her coding clinic or CPT assistant or something else, you know, because she'll tell me in general terms, you know, like what's happening and what is her question. And it's usually like something like a sequencing thing, you know, if they come in with this and what about this and what about this. And so again, if you review your guidelines and you review CPT assistant and coding clinic, you would know, you know. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see y'all again. Bye.